Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. I hope everyone is hanging in there with this whole quarantine mess. Sit back, relax, stay sinful. Story number 1. Marco walked into the hotel. It smelled slightly of old wood and moss, but otherwise it was rather cozy. He looked around and saw some broken leathery couches and a coffee table. He sat there waiting for the reception desk. As he was sitting, he looked around. It was something he always did. He always tried to be aware of his surroundings. He saw the normal old wooden desk with pens and papers and an old-fashioned telephone. The floor was carpeted, a red and purple color. There were 2 visible exits, the emergency and the entrance that had a sliding door. There was an elevator directly ahead of the entrance. There was a cleaning closet with the usual sign, staff only. Besides the closet, there was only one other room, sit the sign, 313 on. That was rather unusual, as it was the only room on the ground floor. He stood up and stepped towards it, wanting to investigate a bit more, but exactly as he was reaching for the doorknob, a receptionist clacked out from the elevator. After he received the key to his room, the woman smiled at him and gave him a grave look. "I saw you trying to go into that room over there." She nodded towards room 313. "Yes, that's right. I was just wondering why there was a random room on the ground floor." "Well, actually, you're not supposed to go in there. It's locked, but people still attempt to go in. I suggest you don't try. It's really for your own good." She shook her head with a grin face, indicating the end of the conversation, so he walked up to his room. Marco just assumed it to be another cleaning storage, but on the 3rd day, his curiosity got the better of him. Before he went to work, he decided to peek through the keyhole. It wouldn't hurt to take a small look, right? He lowered himself and looked, but all he saw was a blank white cube room. Nothing. Only white walls and a white floor. It wasn't big or small, but it felt cramped. There was no furniture. The only thing in the room was a woman, who was also wearing a white dress, the same shade as the walls. She had her back turned to the door. Her hair was dirty, seemingly scraggly and knotted. It was quite a strange sight which he didn't think would be easy to forget, but it hadn't been that much of a surprise. He thought of much stranger ideas about the room through the past few days. Thinking as he said, he went to work. That afternoon he returned and saw no one else around. He decided to check up on the woman in her creepy room. When he tried to look through the keyhole, he saw nothing but red. Guessing she had covered the slot with a red cloth, he backed away to bump into the receptionist. She gave him a look of pity. "You looked into the room, didn't you?" He nodded, worried she was going to lose it, but instead she just spoke calmly. "The truth is that woman died a couple of years ago. We learned to live with it. We couldn't get her out. All of the walls are white, because otherwise she would scratch it all up while we weren't watching, often leaving blood stains on the walls. But after we colored the room white, she stopped. Her entire body looks pale white and lifeless too. Maybe you didn't see that. Even her hair is gray, right? Only her eyes aren't white. She has blood red eyes." Story number 2. I'm back on the deep web. I went on the website and I went to the red room. There was a webcam in a dark room, then a light turned on. A middle-aged man chained up with some old bread next to him. There was a chat box. I decided to type hello. Other people responded. One said cut his ear off. Another person said rape him. I read these words in shock. A person in a mask came out with a whip and hit the guy. The guy in the mask came up to the camera and had a card saying my name on it. I was so scared. I typed in the chat, yes. At that time, the host of the Red Room typed, "Do you like the Red Room?" I stopped the show and closed the browser. I heard a bing come from my computer, and it got louder and louder. Then I opened my laptop. It was a video chat. The man in the mask started typing in the chat box. The words said my full name, my birth date, and my address. I hung up the chat and did a factory reset, and then I went to bed. The next day I found a file on my computer. It said chat. I opened it and it said my parents' name, my sister's name, and my IP address. That's when I smashed the computer on the ground, lied to my mom that it fell off of the desk. It's been 2 days since I broke my computer. I told a couple of my friends at school about what happened. They were shocked and they asked why I did it. I told them just for fun, I guess. Now it's 4:30 p.m. My brother told me he was leaving tonight to go home to West Virginia. I was very upset, so I went to my room. I opened the door and a mask was on my window. My mom ran up and she saw the mask and asked, "Why is this mask here?" I told her I didn't know. Of course she didn't believe me. October 23rd, 2013. It's 1 a.m. and I heard loud crashes downstairs. I go downstairs with my baseball bat to investigate. A man downstairs screamed at the top of his lungs and ran outside. I turned on all of the lights, and the lights were red. My parents came down and called the cops as soon as possible, and when they came, people were outside. My friend ran up to me and asked why the house lights were red. I told my friend it was a man from the chat room. The police told us to stay as far away from our home as possible for at least 2 days, while they investigate this strange happening. Story number 3. I took a little break for a few days before I decided to go back into the true Red Rooms. I paid my Bitcoin and got sent a new password. It took a few days before they sent it to me along with another username. I guess this is how they managed to keep it so secretive, so that way people couldn't be tracked. I put in my username and password on the first page. This particular Red Room number 2 brought you to another page that asked for my password. So instead of 1 page, it went through 2, I guess for extra protection. A bright red screen flashing big black letters read, "Live Dissections Inc." Underneath the black box was the list of IP addresses that were recorded. Besides each one were the words, "Permitted" or "Banned." I assume some people abused their privilege on this site, or possibly tried to hack it. They wanted those people to know they were being watched. As for the rules written on the site, they were simple. Number 1, you can pick and choose from a list of surgical tools. There were cranium drills, bone saws, rib knives, and all types of cutting and dissecting instruments. The list went on and on. Number 2, you must keep paying Bitcoin to keep playing. You communicate what you want done to the victim through the chat box. You are not allowed to chat with other users or make comments to them. 5 users popped into the chat box, including me. Your waiting time is 5 minutes popped up on the black screen. Then the live stream began to start. I took a deep breath. A man who is obviously sedated is lying in what looks like an old green dentist chair. He is in a blue hospital gown. His wrists and ankles are strapped down. 2 people in doctors' scrubs and masks were injecting him in the arm with 2 different needles. Then the messages started popping up on the chat box. One user typed, "I want to see an amputation of the arm, please." Another said, "Drill his head open and pull his skin down over his face like they do with autopsies." Another user wanted a complete organ dissection. Other users typed in foreign languages that I couldn't understand. I I want to puke. I could clearly see the poor man had labored breathing. They must have made him very sedated. All these people were sickly bidding on what they wanted to see. The surgery that won was the arm amputation. I was glad I would not have to view the other two. I don't think I could have stomached that. The user, CDeadRiser 5893, must have paid the most Bitcoin. I saw one of the surgeons grab a scalpel as the camera zoomed in. Then he began to cut through the man's hairy arm right above the elbow. Yuck. The guy was alive and dark red blood started gushing out of his arm onto the floor. You could see the muscle twitching underneath as the camera zoomed in on the pinky, fleshy, bloody mess. Now CDeadRiser 5893 was typing in the chat box. Yes, oh yes, this is fucking amazing. I'm getting off right now on this shit. What looked to be a huge towel or gauze pad was placed between the cut open tissue and stuck completely through the arm. You could see it hanging out the other side. The hairs on my neck began to stand up. He then began to move it back and forth through the tissue in a sawing motion. He was cutting away the remaining attached tendons and ligaments, I guessed. Suddenly the man started to wake up and moan in pain. His eyes looked a bit squinty. He looked down and literally fainted on the spot. They injected him again with a needle. I wanted to look away. Another username, Urgent Surge 666, who seemed to know all the steps of an amputation, typed, "Use the bone saw and cut it off." Now what looked to be a bone saw was picked up. It looked very eerie with its sharp little teeth like points. The surgeon gave a thumbs up to the camera and began to saw straight through. The saw hummed as I could see little particles of white bone going up in the air. Scissors were used to finish cutting away the globs of flesh still left in place. And just like that, the arm was pulled away. The surgeon tossed it towards the camera. It hit the ground with a loud splat. I wanted to turn the computer off. Our victim was now an amputee. There was a lot of blood coming out. The victim started turning an ashy gray color. This guy was going to die and bleed out. Do you want the artery to be clamped off, or do you want him to bleed out? Popped up on the message in the chat box. One person typed, "No," and CDeadRiser 5893 said, "Let him bleed out, man. He's not going to want to wake up after all of this." I couldn't believe how casual he was about leading this man to his impending death. I found myself yelling at the computer, "Clamp it off! Clamp it off!" I knew if I wanted results I would have to pay more Bitcoin, so I did. I typed in, "Clamp it, save his life." I was this poor guy's lifeline while he was at the mercy of a bunch of crazy people who wanted him dead. My heart was beating out of my chest. I was sweating and about to have a panic attack. "Kelly clamps," shouted the surgeon. I felt relief as he clamped the bleeding artery off. Thank God. Then the nub was dressed with gauze to stop any extra bleeding. Then the worst part was when the guy finally woke up. He was laying there for about 15 minutes and the surgeon were slapping him on the face and laughing. Laughing. He was coming to and in shock. I could see the surgeons undoing the straps and helping him sit up. How the hell could they laugh at what they had just done to this poor man? They almost killed him and took a part of his body away for no good reason. For what? All for the expense of someone else's pleasure? It made me sick. The man looked down and his eyes bulged out. He looked to be in disbelief. "My arm," he shouted with a hoarse-sounding voice. I could see the nub moving as if he was trying to figure out where his arm went. His mouth hung wide open. The surgeons were patting him on the back. He began to cry. One of the surgeons motioned for the camera to be shut off. Everything went black. The live stream was over. I shuddered. Unfortunately, I still had 3 more rooms to go. Story number 4. You're on your computer or laptop in your room when a pop-up appears. It's a red flash pop-up that says, "Do you like?" A little girl's mangled voice repeats the question. Do I like? Like what? You think, puzzled by the abrupt end to it. You click the exit button, but the words change. The words read, "Do you like red?" The little girl's voice becomes more mangled as she asks the questions. Do I like red? You think, confused at the question and frustrated that you can't get off the pop-up. You click it a few more times and the sentence is changed to something entirely different than what you first got. The sentence reads, "Do you like the red room?" The little girl's mangled voice asks the question. Do I like the red room? You think in a rage and extremely confused. What is the red room? Then a website pops up. Just a black page with no URL or any buttons to exit out of. There's a list of names and you scan them carefully. You notice that your friends' names are on there, and your name's at the bottom of the list. You feel something behind you. The next day, the police are investigating your grisly suicide. They walk into your room and find you lying on the bed, covered in blood. There's blood on your walls, and it looks like you painted your room red with your own blood, from all of it on your hands. Your laptop still has that list on it with your name at the bottom, and before the police can look through it, and it shuts down with an eerie, echoey voice, never to turn back on. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe for future content. Email your true scary stories to thesinfulsavant@gmail.com. The email will be left in the description box below as well. Hope everyone's staying safe and as sane as humanly possible, despite our present situation. Till we meet again, stay sinful.